This channel is for educational purposes only. Make sure you do your own due diligence before making any investments. And there is inherent risk in trading, so it's speculative. Just make sure you keep that in mind. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. So today we are going to go through the market, look at some different indices, and I do want to look at a few sector ETFs as well. Just some changes taking place. I think it'll at least give you a better idea of what's happening in the marketplace right now. So let's get into that right this second. We're going to start with the S&P as always, and I've got a weekly on the left and a daily on the right. Now I use an 18 simple MA and a 40 simple MA on every time frame that I look at. Even if I'm going down to a 10-minute chart, I still have the 18 and the 40. And then I have MACD, a standard MACD on every chart, and I also have a 13-8 ADX. The DI lines are set to 13, and ADX is set to 8. So now let's get into this. So if anyone's been watching this for any period of time, you know I've been discussing how the 18 and the 40 are moving up at about the same rate. I like to look at these together like this, and it can act as a buddy system and provide a pretty significant insight into how strong the trend is. When the price doesn't get too stretched away from the 18 and both of these lines are just moving up at about the same rate, then we're in a pretty strong trend, and that's really what's been taking place. Now, I do look at other indicators. So I'm looking at the MACD and I'm looking at ADX, and I don't like what I see. So I know that price and the moving averages play a pretty big role in what I'm looking at. However, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm looking at what's taking place in a ADX line that keeps dropping and it's below 25. And a MACD that maybe is climbing back above its signal line, but really is nowhere near a prior high, even though price keeps making new highs. So we see that. And then if we go and look at the daily chart, look at how low the ADX is, despite the fact that price has made a pretty significant new high. And we don't have a new high in MACD either. So the trend is up, the price pattern is up, but what's missing is sellers. This is what I said last time. Let's take a look at this one more time just so you can see. Look at this red DI, which represents the strength of the sellers. On the weekly chart, you see how it keeps popping up and failing at this level until we get, a legitimate breakout and preferably above 25. But when we see this red line on the weekly cross above green, then I think we're in for something a little bit more complex in terms of a corrective pattern. And we just haven't seen it. And it should show up in the first leg down, and then we should get a rally up. And so this is what I'm looking for. I'm just not seeing any real signs of selling. Even on the daily chart, the red line is down at 20, just not much in the way of selling pressure. Let's go to the QQQ. So this is a little bit different, but it's the same concept. We're moving higher and making higher highs and higher lows, and the trend is to the upside. But look at how the ADX can't get above 25 on this one. So we had a pretty strong trending condition in place through this period, and see how the ADX was really strong through this whole period. And then the ADX dropped under 25. That's not necessarily the worst thing that can happen during a pullback or a correction. But once the trend starts to move back to, the price starts to move back to new highs, we want to see improvement in this ADX line, and it's just not getting there. Now, green DI is improving. It is back above. It's made a higher high above this previous peak. But and I'm not calling it quits based on this, right? I'm not saying to be a seller or get out or go short or anything like that. I'm saying this is an early warning sign that the ADX isn't confirming. So we want to keep closer watch on what's taking place. The same thing is taking place on the daily chart. We're making higher highs and higher lows, but MACD is going the opposite direction and ADX is going the opposite direction. So the one thing I can tell you is that the trend is up, but we don't have a strong condition in place. The momentum conditions are not that great. Let's go to IWM. I have been talking about this for a while. I want to zero in on the weekly.
This made this monster move and has been consolidating sideways. And what I've been saying, I brought this up a few times over the course of the last month, is that I expect the 18 and the 40 to probably come together, and I expect the MACD to come down closer to the 0 line. Once we get to that position, we are going to want to take a really hard look. I'm going to suggest that you can go look at all the stocks in the Russell 2000, not all of them, but look at the ones that are the biggest names and which ones are showing the most strength. And those are the ones we really want to zero in on at that point. I still think it's a little early. You could probably start collecting a watch list if you want, but the reality is I do believe this is setting up, but I'm waiting for a little bit more confirmation. I think it's going to be a couple weeks to a month away. The Dow Jones has the best looking ADX position on the weekly of all the indices. Even though green DI has not come back up yet, the last peak, so we made a nice run to the upside and we had good confirmation in ADX. We've been consolidating and now we're at a new high. I want to start to see improvement in the green DI, and I do want to see the ADX start to tick back up. But overall, I still think this is in the best shape right now. And I'll go through the individual sectors and explain why I feel that way. Here's a nice looking daily chart, sideways pattern, and now it looks like it's breaking out. Okay, let's go down and look at these indices, the ETFs for the sector. So here's the XLK. This looks so much like the QQQ, and notice how this is not confirming. So we made a high here, and look at how ADX couldn't get above 25. And then we pulled back, and then we made another new high, and ADX is still only at 23. So we've made two higher highs, and ADX is still below 25. This is not the type of pattern you want to be seeing. Same thing is taking place on the price pattern here. Look at how the ADX is really not confirming. So does that mean we sell these? Not necessarily. If you go and look at your individual stocks, then you might have good confirmation on those. If you have a stock that isn't confirming, then I would really raise my stop, tighten my stops, and or reduce my exposure here. Yes, I would be willing to trim these a little bit if the stocks also have this same type of price pattern. Like I said, if you have an individual stock that has good momentum characteristics, go with the stock, manage the stock independently, and just recognize what's going on in the market. XLY, another one where we're making higher highs and higher lows, but look at this. There's just no momentum in the place. The green DI can't even get, it's only at 20. So this is going up. It's a little deceiving. We're making higher highs and higher lows on the weekly chart, but we just don't have the momentum behind it. Ultimately, this should come home to roost, but it's probably not going to happen until we clearly break the 18-week. You don't have to jump the gun. You don't have to do anything like that, but just be aware of what's going on and be a little bit more picky about your entry points. Be a little bit more picky about what stocks you buy. Make sure they have the perfect setup and have all the conditions in place. Now let's look at some interesting patterns. Look at the XLB. So this has a really strong ADX pattern and you're pulling back, and look at how green DI is starting to move. This is a nice reaction, very bullish. And it's actually the two time frame pattern because we have an 18 and a 40 both rising on the weekly, and we had the opposing trend pattern. We went in the zone, came out for a day, broke down, and then reversed on a dime and then turned around. So I view that as a pretty nice setup with the weekly and the daily. Look at the XLY, even stronger. Same pattern, 18 above the 40 rising. Look at the strength of the ADX. Now, we've been in a consolidation, so I'm okay with low ADX. Now we're starting to move out of this, and it looks like this breakout above 104 is pretty positive. Getting some green DI to show up. I mean, these are all positive signs, I think, in terms of the way these are set up. And now let's look at the XLF. Look at the strength of this. This reading was up in the 50s. And now we've worked off. Now remember, when this is dropping, that's usually a representative of the selling pressure. And the selling pressure was not that bad. And so we came back into the area of the 18-week and we're bouncing off that. Look at the reaction. Very, very strong. This is the strongest of the three. Probably been the strongest individual sector over the last 3 weeks. But we want to start looking for these areas, XLB, XLI, XLF, for some kind of a pullback in the individual stocks. Start to watch those as these start to pull back. So that would be my recommendation. Go ahead and post any comments or questions, and we'll see you next week.